Dr. Kate Morrison knelt beside the ancient stone tablet, her gloved hands trembling as she brushed away centuries of dust. The symbols carved into the rock were different from anything she had seen before, yet something about them felt familiar. She had spent 3 years studying dead civilizations across the galaxy, and each one left her with more questions than answers. "Captain Collins, you need to see this," she called out, her voice echoing through the empty ruins. Captain Jake Collins walked over, his boots crunching on the broken stones that littered the floor of what had once been a great temple. The research vessel Columbia had been exploring dead worlds for 5 years now, but this planet felt different. The air was thick with an unexplained tension that made everyone on the team nervous. "What did you find, Kate?" Jake asked, crouching down beside her. Kate pointed to the symbols on the tablet. "It's the same message, exactly the same as the other 4 worlds we've visited." Jake's face went pale. He had hoped they wouldn't find it here. The message that haunted his dreams and made him question everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. Dr. Lisa Park, the team's language expert, hurried over with her translation device. She had been working on the previous messages for months, and each translation gave her chills. "Let me scan it," she said, running the device over the carved symbols. The machine hummed for several minutes before displaying the results. Lisa read the translation aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "They protect something worse." The 3 of them stood in silence, staring at the words on the screen. It was the same message they had found on 4 other dead worlds, carved into the most important buildings of civilizations that had been gone for thousands of years. "That makes 5, Jake said, running his hand through his gray hair. 5 different civilizations, thousands of years apart, and they all left the same warning. Kate stood up and looked around the ruined temple. The walls were covered with paintings that showed strange scenes of space battles and mysterious figures. But at the center of every painting was the same image, a small blue planet that looked exactly like Earth. "There's more," Lisa said, pointing, her scanner at other parts of the tablet. This civilization was more advanced than the others. They left detailed records. The scanner worked for another hour, translating hundreds of symbols. As the words appeared on the screen, the team gathered around to read them. What they found made their blood run cold. The records told of a great civilization that had explored the galaxy for thousands of years. They had met many other species and built a vast network of trade and knowledge. But they had always avoided one particular area of space, the region where Earth's solar system sat. According to the records, every species in the galaxy knew about the forbidden zone around Earth. Ships that entered that area simply disappeared. No distress calls, no wreckage, nothing. They just vanished as if they had never existed. Most species believed that humans were the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. After all, they were the only known life form that lived in the forbidden zone and survived. But these records suggested something different. Something that made Kate's hands shake as she read the translation. "The humans think they rule their world," the ancient text said, "but they are not rulers, they are guards. They protect something that sleeps beneath their planet, something that must never wake up." Dr. Ben Cooper, the team's scientist, had been taking readings from his instruments while the others worked on the translation. He walked over with a worried look on his face. "The energy readings here are off the charts," he said. "Whatever happened to this civilization, it happened fast. The entire planet shows signs of some kind of massive energy release." Jake looked at the readings on Ben's device. The numbers didn't make sense. It was as if the entire planet had been hit by a weapon more powerful than anything humans had ever imagined. "How long ago?" Jake asked. "About 200 years," Ben replied. "Give or take a few decades." Kate felt her heart skip a beat. 200 years ago was when humanity had begun its rapid advancement in technology. It was when humans had gone from barely being able to fly to building spaceships that could travel between stars. "That can't be a coincidence," she said. Lisa continued scanning the tablet, finding more and more text hidden in the stone. The ancient civilization had been thorough in their record-keeping, and what they had written down was terrifying. "Listen to this," Lisa said, reading from her scanner. The great silence fell over the forbidden world exactly 200 of our years ago. Our scouts reported strange energy pulses coming from the planet. Then all communication stopped. When we sent ships to investigate, they never came back. The text went on to describe how the civilization had tried to contact other species about what was happening near Earth. But every species they talked to became frightened and refused to help. Some even destroyed their own ships rather than risk getting involved. The old ones stir, the text continued. The watchers beneath grow restless. The surface dwellers advance too quickly. They gain knowledge that should take thousands of years to learn. Someone or something is teaching them. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity's technological progress had been incredibly fast. In just a few hundred years, they had gone from using horses for transportation to exploring other solar systems. Scientists had always wondered how humans had advanced so quickly, but they had assumed it was just natural intelligence and curiosity. Kate found another section of the tablet that made her gasp. "Jake, look at this. They have star charts here. Maps showing the routes that different species use to try to reach Earth. The charts showed dozens of different paths through space, all leading toward Earth's solar system. But every single route was marked with the same symbol, a symbol that Lisa's scanner translated as death or void or never returned. 47 different species tried to reach Earth over the past 1,000 years, Kate said, counting the routes on the chart. None of them made it. Ben checked his instruments again and found something that made him step back in shock. The energy signature from this planet. It matches readings we've been getting from deep space monitoring stations around Earth. Jake stared at him. What kind of readings? Pulses. Regular energy pulses coming from deep underground on Earth. They happen every few months and they're getting stronger. Our scientists think they might be related to geological activity, but now I'm not so sure. The team spent the rest of the day exploring the ruins and scanning everything they could find. Every new discovery made the mystery deeper and more frightening. This civilization had been incredibly advanced, with technology that surpassed even humanity's current abilities, yet something had destroyed them completely in a matter of days. As the sun set on the dead world, Jake gathered his team back at the ship. They sat in the main cabin looking at all the evidence they had collected. The translation devices had worked overtime, turning ancient symbols into words that painted a picture none of them wanted to believe. "So let me get this straight," Jake said, looking at his notes. "Every major civilization in the galaxy knows about Earth, but they're all too scared to go there. When they do try, they disappear. And now we find out that something happened 200 years ago that scared an entire advanced civilization to death." Kate nodded. "And whatever happened, it coincided exactly with humanity's sudden technological boom." Lisa pulled up the final translation on her scanner. It was the last thing the civilization had written before they died. "The prison weakens. The guards grow strong but remain blind. What sleeps beneath will not sleep forever. When it wakes, all will end. We go now to the void rather than see what comes next." The cabin fell silent. Outside, the dead world's twin moons cast eerie shadows through the windows. Jake looked at his team and saw the same fear in their eyes that he felt in his heart. "We need to get this information back to Earth," he said finally. "Command needs to know what we found." But as he said the words, Jake wondered if humanity was ready for the truth. Were they prepared to learn that they might not be the masters of their own world? Were they ready to discover that their rapid advancement might have come at a price they didn't even know they were paying? The Columbia's engines hummed to life as they prepared to leave the dead world behind. But Jake knew that the real journey was just beginning. They were heading home with news that would change everything humanity thought they knew about themselves and their place in the universe. As the ship lifted off into space, Kate looked back at the ruins one last time. The ancient temple sat in darkness, holding secrets that had died with an entire civilization. But those secrets were no longer buried. Now they were humanity's burden to bear. The question was, what would humanity do with the truth when they learned it? Admiral Greg Turner sat in his office at Earth Defense Command, staring at the report from the Columbia. He had read it 3 times, and each time it made less sense and more worry at the same time. The coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but he didn't notice. His mind was focused on the impossible words on the screen. The door chimed and his secretary announced the arrival of Dr. Amy Johnson from the Department of Xenobiology. Greg had called her as soon as he finished reading the report. If anyone could make sense of what Captain Collins had found, it would be Amy. "You look terrible, Greg," Amy said as she walked into the office. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "What's got you so worried that you called me at midnight?" Greg handed her the tablet with the Columbia's report. "Read this. Tell me I'm losing my mind." Amy took the tablet and settled into the chair across from his desk. Greg watched her face as she read, seeing her expression change from curiosity to confusion to fear. When she finished, she set the tablet down with shaking hands. "This can't be real," she said quietly. "That's what I hoped you'd say. But Collins has never filed a false report. Neither has Dr. Morrison. They're good people. Amy, they don't make things up." Amy picked up the tablet again and scrolled through the images of the ancient tablets. The symbols were clear, and the translations seemed accurate. She had studied enough alien languages to recognize good translation work when she saw it. 5 different worlds, she said. 5 different civilizations, all dead. All with the same message about Earth. Greg nodded. "I need to know if there's any truth to this. I need to know if we're missing something about our own planet." Amy was quiet, for a long moment thinking. Then she looked up at Greg with worry in her eyes. "There might be something. I've been working on a project that I haven't talked about much. Energy readings from deep underground. We've been detecting them for about 10 years now." "What kind of energy readings?" "Pulses. Regular pulses that come from very deep underground. Much deeper than any human-made facility. They happen every few months and they're getting stronger." Greg felt his stomach drop. "How much stronger?" "Last month's pulse was 30% stronger than the first one we detected. Whatever is causing them, it's becoming more active." Greg reached for his phone. "I'm calling Professor Carl Davis. If these readings are connected to what Collins found, we need to know everything about Earth's history around that time period." An hour later, Professor Carl Davis arrived at the Defense Command building. He was an older man with a beard and kind eyes, but tonight he looked tired and worried. Greg had told him enough over the phone to make him drop everything and come immediately. "Show me what you have," Carl said without any greeting. Greg and Amy spread out all the information they had gathered. The reports from the Columbia, Amy's energy readings, and Carl's own research files that he had brought with him. The 3 of them worked through the night looking for connections. "Here," Carl said, pointing to a chart he had made. "Look at this timeline. 200 years ago, something changed on Earth. Our technological advancement suddenly sped up. We went from basic steam engines to advanced electronics in a fraction of the time it should have taken." Amy looked at her energy readings. "And that's exactly when my department started finding the first signs of unusual underground activity. Not the current pulses, those are new, but other things. Unexplained heat sources, magnetic anomalies, strange mineral formations." Greg spread out a map of Earth and marked all the locations where Amy's department had detected unusual activity. The marks covered the entire planet, but they weren't random. They formed a pattern. "Look at this," he said. "These locations aren't scattered. They're arranged in a specific design." Carl pulled out a calculator and started measuring the distances between the marks. After several minutes of work, he looked up with a pale face. "It's a geometric pattern. A perfect geometric pattern that covers the entire planet. The chances of this happening naturally are essentially 0. Amy stared at the map. "It's like someone drew a design on the Earth and then placed energy sources at specific points. Or," Greg said quietly, "like someone built a containment system." The 3 of them looked at each other in silence. The word containment hung in the air like a dark cloud. Carl opened one of his research files. "I've been studying historical records from around that time period. There are gaps. Lots of gaps. Satellite data that should exist but doesn't. Government records that were classified beyond top secret and then lost. Entire research projects that suddenly stopped with no explanation. What kind of research projects? Amy asked. Deep drilling projects, ocean exploration, underground mapping. All of them stopped around the same time about 200 years ago. And get this, every single one of them was stopped by direct government order. Not because of funding or technical problems, they were ordered to stop. Greg felt pieces of a puzzle starting to come together, but it was a puzzle he didn't want to solve. So 200 years ago, something happened underground. The government classified everything and stopped all deep exploration. At the same time, human technology suddenly advanced much faster than it should have. Amy nodded. And now we're detecting energy pulses from the same underground areas, pulses that are getting stronger every month. Carl pulled out another file. There's more. I've been looking at ancient human civilizations, the Egyptians, the Mayans, the Sumerians. They all have stories about watchers beneath the earth and the sleeping ones. Most historians think these are just myths. But what if they're not? He opened an old book and showed them pictures of ancient carvings. The images showed human figures performing what looked like rituals over deep holes in the ground. Other carvings showed the same figures receiving objects that looked like advanced technology. Every ancient civilization has stories about receiving gifts of knowledge from underground beings. Fire, agriculture, mathematics, astronomy. According to the myths, humans didn't develop these things on their own. They were taught. Amy looked at the carvings more closely. These locations where the rituals took place. Do you know where they were? Carl nodded and pulled out a modern map. He marked several locations around the world. These are the sites where archaeologists have found the most evidence of these ancient rituals. Greg compared Carl's map to the energy readings map. His hands started shaking. They're the same locations. The ancient ritual sites are exactly the same places where we're detecting energy pulses today. The room fell silent again. Outside, the sun was starting to rise, but none of them noticed. They were too busy staring at evidence that their world was not what they thought it was. Amy broke the silence. I need to check something. She pulled out her tablet and started making calls to colleagues around the world. Within an hour, she had confirmation from research stations on 6 continents. The energy pulses aren't just happening in a few places, she reported. They're happening all over the planet. Every deep monitoring station we have is detecting them, and they're all synchronized. Whatever is causing them, it's connected underground across the entire planet. Carl made his own calls to archaeological sites around the world. The news he got back was disturbing. Seismic activity at ancient sites has increased by 400% in the last year. Sites that have been quiet for thousands of years are suddenly showing movement. Greg looked at both of them. We need more information. I'm going to authorize a deeper investigation. What kind of investigation? Amy asked. I'm going to create a special committee. Top secret. We need to find out what's really happening under our planet. And we need to find out what connection it has to the messages Collins found. Carl gathered up his files. Greg, if what we're thinking is true, then humanity might be in a situation we never imagined. We might not be the masters of our own world. Amy packed up her equipment. The energy readings are getting stronger every month. Whatever's down there, it's becoming more active. We need to know what it is before it becomes too active. Greg walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Millions of people going about their daily lives not knowing that their entire understanding of their world might be wrong. I'll make the calls today, he said. We'll form the committee and start a full investigation. But I want this kept absolutely secret. If what we suspect is true, panic won't help anyone. As Amy and Carl left his office, Greg remained at the window. The sun was fully up now, shining down on a world that suddenly seemed much more mysterious and dangerous than it had the day before. Somewhere deep underground, something was stirring. And for the first time in his military career, Admiral Greg Turner was afraid of what his own planet might be hiding. Agent Betty Clark walked through the underground corridors of a facility that didn't exist on any official map. She had worked for the Deep Anomaly Research Division for 15 years, but she had never been asked to brief anyone outside the organization before. Today was different. Today, Admiral Turner wanted answers. The facility was built 300 feet underground, beneath a government building in Washington. Most people who worked in the building above had no idea what lay beneath their feet. Betty preferred it that way. The less people knew about what her division studied, the better everyone slept at night. She entered the briefing room where Admiral Turner, Dr. Johnson, and Professor Davis were waiting. The walls were lined with monitors showing data streams from around the world. Red lights blinked steadily, indicating activity at dozens of monitoring stations. "Gentlemen, Dr. Johnson," Betty said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "I understand you want to know about the deep anomalies." Admiral Turner leaned forward. "We need to know everything. No more secrets." Betty opened a thick file and spread several photographs across the table. The images showed strange formations, deep underground, captured by drilling equipment and deep-sea cameras. The formations didn't look natural. They looked built. "We've been monitoring unusual activity beneath the Earth's surface for over a century," Betty began. "It started during the Civil War, when soldiers reported hearing sounds coming from deep underground during quiet moments between battles." She pointed to a map that showed dots scattered across the globe. "These are confirmed anomaly sites, places where we detect regular energy signatures that don't match any known natural phenomena." Dr. Johnson studied the map closely. "How many sites are there?" 237 confirmed sites. "But we believe there are many more that we haven't found yet." Professor Davis looked at the photographs. "What exactly are these formations?" Betty pulled out more detailed images. "We're not entirely sure. They appear to be artificial structures built from materials we can't identify. They're incredibly old, older than human civilization, but they're still active." Admiral Turner pointed to one of the photos. "Active how?" "They pulse with energy on a regular schedule. The pulses have been getting stronger and more frequent over the past 20 years. But here's the strange part. They're all connected." Betty activated a large screen on the wall. It showed a three-dimensional map of the Earth with lines connecting all the anomaly sites. The lines formed a complex geometric pattern that wrapped around the entire planet like a web. Whatever these structures are, they're part of a single, massive system. When one site increases activity, the others respond. It's like they're communicating with each other. Dr. Johnson stared at the screen. "This is what we detected in our surface readings, but I had no idea the network was this extensive." Betty nodded. "Most people don't. We've worked very hard to keep this information classified, but recent events have made that difficult." "Recent events?" Admiral Turner asked. Betty pulled up another screen showing activity levels over time. The graph showed steady, low-level activity for decades, then a sharp increase starting about 5 years ago. The anomalies are becoming more active. Much more active. 5 years ago, we detected maybe one significant pulse per month from the entire network. Now we're detecting several pulses per day. Professor Davis studied the timeline. "What changed 5 years ago?" "That's when humans started deep space exploration in earnest. When we began visiting other star systems and making contact with evidence of alien civilizations." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral Turner was the first to speak. "Are you saying that our space exploration triggered something underground?" Betty shrugged. "I'm saying the timing is suspicious. The more we explore space, the more active the underground network becomes." Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, the Columbia was still orbiting the dead alien world. Dr. Kate Morrison had made another discovery in the ruins, one that she hadn't included in her initial report because it seemed too incredible to believe. She stood in a chamber deep beneath the alien temple, studying walls covered with star maps. But these weren't just any star maps. They showed the galaxy as it existed millions of years ago, with detailed notations about every star system. Dr. Lisa Park worked beside her, translating the alien text that accompanied the maps. "Kate, you need to hear this." Kate looked up from her scanning equipment. "What did you find?" "According to these records, the galaxy used to be full of life. Hundreds of civilizations, all connected by trade routes and communication networks. But something happened about 5 million years ago that changed everything. Lisa pointed to a section of text that glowed softly under her translation light. They call it the Great Transcendence, an ancient race that had become so advanced that they evolved beyond physical form, but when they transcended, something went wrong. Kate felt a chill run down her spine. Wrong how? They became something that threatened the very structure of reality itself. The other civilizations in the galaxy had to work together to stop them, but they couldn't destroy them completely. Lisa moved to another section of the wall. So they built a prison designed to contain beings that existed beyond normal physical laws, and they chose Earth as the location because of its unique properties. Kate stared at the star map. Earth was clearly marked, surrounded by warning symbols and detailed notes about containment procedures. The prison required guardians, Lisa continued. Beings that could maintain the containment systems without understanding what they were maintaining. The original guardians were volunteers from various civilizations. They gave up their lives to keep the galaxy safe. Kate found another section of text and scanned it quickly. Lisa, look at this. It says the prison was designed to be self-maintaining. When the original guardians died out, the system would choose a new species to serve as replacements. How would it choose? Kate's hands shook as she read the translation. By uplifting them. By giving them technology and knowledge beyond their natural development. By making them advance so quickly that they wouldn't question where their advancement came from. Back on Earth, Betty Clark was showing Admiral Turner and his team something that made their blood run cold. It was a recording from a deep-sea monitoring station, captured just 3 days earlier. The recording showed the ocean floor at a depth of over 30,000 feet. Most of the image was dark, lit only by the station's powerful lights. But in Nuddy, Twain, the center of the frame, something was moving. We've never seen activity like this before, Betty said. The formations down there have been dormant for as long as we've been monitoring them. But now they're starting to open. The recording showed massive stone structures shifting and changing shape. Ancient mechanisms that had been sealed for millions of years were beginning to activate. What's inside them? Dr. Johnson asked. Betty paused the recording and zoomed in on one of the opening structures. Deep inside, something vast and dark was stirring. We don't know. But whatever it is, it's big. Really big. And it's been sleeping down there for a very long time. Admiral Turner looked at the frozen image on the screen. How long do we have before these things fully wake up? Betty pulled up a projection chart. Based on current activity levels, we estimate 6 months to 2 years before full activation of the network. Professor Davis had been quiet during most of the briefing, but now he spoke up. I've been thinking about the ancient myths I showed you earlier. Every culture has stories about sleeping gods or ancient powers that will someday return. He opened his notebook and read from his research. The Egyptians called them the first ones. The Mayans referred to them as the Dreamwalkers. The Sumerians had dozens of names for them, but they all meant the same thing. Beings that existed before the world was made. Betty nodded. We've found similar references in every culture we've studied. It's like humanity has been carrying genetic memories of these entities for thousands of years. But here's what worries me, Professor Davis continued. In every single myth, the return of these beings marks the end of the world as we know it. Not destruction exactly, but transformation into something completely different. Dr. Johnson looked at all the data they had collected. So we're the unknowing guardians of a prison that contains beings from before human history, and our rapid technological development has been guided by the prison systems to help us maintain containment. Admiral Turner stood up and walked to the window, even though it only showed the underground facility's artificial lighting. The question is, what do we do with this information? Betty closed her files. Sir, there's one more thing you need to know. The other agencies that have been monitoring this situation, they've all reached the same conclusion. We're not just guardians. We're also the key. The key to what? To opening the prison. Human consciousness, human technology, human presence on Earth. It's all part of the containment system, but it's also part of the release mechanism. When we reach a certain level of development, when we spread far enough into space, We automatically trigger the release sequence. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. They were trapped in a system they didn't understand, serving a purpose they hadn't chosen. Dr. Steve Wright checked his diving equipment one final time before entering the submersible Deep Explorer. As the lead marine biologist for the secret expedition, he had volunteered to descend to the deepest parts of the Mariana Trench. Admiral Turner had authorized the mission after Betty Clark's briefing revealed that one of the most active anomaly sites lay at the bottom of the ocean's deepest point. The submersible was unlike anything the public had ever seen. Built with technology that was officially classified as experimental, it could withstand pressures that would crush conventional vehicles. Dr. Wright was joined by pilot Captain Ron Hayes and equipment specialist Dr. Nancy Ford. All three had been briefed on what they might find, but nothing could have prepared them for what actually waited in the depths. Beginning descent, Captain Hayes announced as the submersible left the surface ship behind. Current depth, 100 feet, and descending. The water around them grew darker with each passing minute. At 1,000 feet, they turned on the external lights. At 5,000 feet, they entered a world that no human had ever seen before. The pressure outside was enormous, but the submersible's advanced hull held strong. Dr. Wright monitored his instruments as they descended. "I'm picking up energy readings already, much stronger than our surface equipment detected." Dr. Ford operated the external cameras, recording everything they saw. "The water temperature is increasing as we go deeper. That shouldn't be happening in this part of the trench." At 20,000 feet, they encountered their first anomaly. The ocean floor below them was not made of normal rock and sediment. Instead, it was covered with smooth, dark material that seemed to absorb their lights. "What is that?" Captain Hayes asked, maneuvering the submersible for a better view. Dr. Wright studied his readings. "It's not natural. The material is giving off a steady energy signature, and it's warm, much warmer than it should be at this depth." They descended further, following the strange material as it formed patterns across the ocean floor. The patterns were clearly artificial, designed by intelligence far beyond human understanding. Geometric shapes stretched for miles in every direction, all connected by channels that pulsed with soft light. At 25,000 feet, they found the structures that Betty Clark's team had been monitoring from the surface. But seeing them in person was completely different from looking at sonar readings. The structures were massive, rising from the ocean floor like ancient skyscrapers. They were made of the same dark material as the patterns, but their surfaces were covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. "My God," Dr. Ford whispered, her camera struggling to focus on the alien architecture. "How old are these things?" Dr. Wright checked his dating equipment. "The readings say millions of years, but that's impossible. Nothing could survive on the ocean floor for that long." Captain Hayes guided the submersible between two of the towering structures. As they moved deeper into the complex, they realized they were not just looking at buildings. They were looking at a machine. A vast, incomprehensible machine that stretched beneath the ocean floor as far as their instruments could detect. "The entire Mariana Trench is artificial," Dr. Wright said in amazement. "These aren't natural formations. Someone built all of this." They found an opening in one of the larger structures and carefully maneuvered the submersible inside. The interior was filled with chambers that defied understanding. The walls curved in ways that made their eyes water, and the geometry seemed to change when they weren't looking directly at it. In the central chamber, they found what they had come looking for, the source of the energy readings. The thing that had been sleeping beneath the earth for millions of years. It was enormous, so large that their lights couldn't illuminate its entire form. What they could see looked like a creature, but one that followed no earthly design. It had features that might have been limbs or might have been something else entirely. Its surface was covered with patterns that moved and shifted, even though the creature appeared to be dormant. "Is it alive?" Dr. Ford asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Wright's instruments were going crazy. "It's giving off massive bioenergy signatures, but the readings don't match any known life form. It's like it exists on a completely different level from normal biological processes." As they watched, the creature's surface began to glow with soft light. The patterns on its skin pulsed in rhythm with the structures around them. And then, without warning, something incredible happened. The creature spoke to them, not with words or sounds, but by changing the reality around their submersible. Suddenly they could understand things they had never known before. They could see how the galaxy had looked millions of years ago. They could feel the presence of civilizations that had died before Earth's sun was born. The entity showed them the truth. It and its kind had once been a normal species, exploring the galaxy and seeking knowledge. But they had advanced too far and too fast. They had learned to manipulate the basic forces of reality itself. In their quest for ultimate understanding, they had become something that threatened the existence of everything else. Other civilizations had tried to communicate with them, tried to make them understand the danger they posed. But the entities had evolved beyond the ability to relate to lower forms of life. They saw other species the way humans might see bacteria. Interesting, but ultimately insignificant. The galaxy's remaining civilizations had faced an impossible choice. They couldn't destroy the entities because they had become too powerful. But they couldn't allow them to continue their transcendence because it would end all other life in the universe. So they had built a prison designed to contain beings that existed partially outside normal reality. The prison was hidden on Earth because Earth's unique magnetic field and geological structure made it the perfect location for containment. The entity showed Dr. Wright and his team how the prison worked. It required constant maintenance by intelligent beings who didn't understand what they were maintaining. The prison's automated systems had uplifted humanity specifically for this purpose, feeding them technology and knowledge to help them unknowingly maintain the containment. But the prison was failing. After millions of years, the containment systems were breaking down. The entity and its kind were beginning to wake up. And when they fully awakened, they would continue their transcendence, changing the nature of reality itself. Dr. Wright felt his mind struggling to process what he was experiencing. The knowledge the entity was sharing was too vast for human consciousness to fully grasp. But he understood enough to be terrified. "How long do we have?" he managed to ask, though he wasn't sure if he spoke aloud or simply thought the question. The entity's response came as a wave of certainty. The prison would fail within months. The containment systems that humanity had been unknowingly maintaining were no longer sufficient to hold beings of such power. Soon, very soon, the entities would be free to complete their transformation. The submersible systems began to malfunction as they remained in the entity's presence. Captain Hayes struggled to maintain control as their instruments sparked and failed. "We need to leave," he said urgently. "The submersible can't handle much more of this." As they prepared to ascend, the entity shared one final piece of information. It wasn't malicious or evil. It didn't hate humanity or wish to cause suffering. It simply existed on a level so far beyond human understanding that humanity's survival was irrelevant to its goals. To the entity, humans were like ants in a garden. The gardener doesn't hate the ants, but when it's time to plant new flowers, the ant colony gets destroyed without a second thought. The ascent to the surface took 6 hours. During the entire journey, none of the 3 expedition members spoke. They were each trying to process what they had experienced, trying to find words for something that couldn't be described in human language. When they finally reached the surface, Admiral Turner was waiting for them on the support ship. He took one look at their faces and knew they had found something terrible. "What did you see down there?" he asked. Dr. Wright stared out at the ocean, knowing that far beneath the waves, something ancient and powerful was stirring. Something that would soon be free to change everything. "We found the answer," he said quietly. "And I wish we hadn't." Back at the secret facility, Betty Clark received the expedition's preliminary report. As she read Dr. Wright's account of their encounter, she realized that everything her organization had feared was coming true. The entities weren't just waking up. They were preparing to finish what they had started millions of years ago. And there was nothing humanity could do to stop them. The only question now was whether the human race would survive the transformation that was coming. The secure meeting room was built directly above one of the most active containment sites in North America. Admiral Turner had chosen this location deliberately. If humanity was going to decide its fate, it should be done as close as possible to the source of their problem. Dr. Kate Morrison sat at the conference table, still shaken by what she had discovered in her final translation of the alien records. Captain Jake Collins sat beside her, along with Dr. Steve Wright, who had barely spoken since his return from the deep ocean encounter. The other members of the secret committee filled the remaining chairs, but the weight of what they had learned made conversation almost impossible. On the wall, monitors showed real-time data from containment sites around the world. Every screen displayed the same alarming trend: energy levels rising, structural integrity failing, and time running out. The deep-sea expedition confirmed what we feared, Admiral Turner began. The entities are real, they're waking up, and they're far beyond anything we can fight or control. Dr. Wright finally spoke, his voice hoarse from days of sleepless nights. You can't fight something that can change reality by thinking about it. We're not dealing with aliens or monsters. We're dealing with beings that have evolved past the point where concepts like life and death have meaning to them. Betty Clark activated a holographic display that showed the global containment network. Red warning lights blinked at dozens of locations. The containment systems are failing faster than we predicted. We now estimate complete failure within 60 days. Professor Carl Davis had spent the past week researching every ancient text he could find. I've discovered something in the oldest human records, stories that go back to the very beginning of civilization. They all talk about a final choice that humanity would have to make. He opened an ancient book and read from a translation he had made. When the sleepers wake and the old ones stir, the guardians must choose. Accept the gift of knowledge and serve forever, or break the chains and face what comes after. Dr. Amy Johnson looked up from her tablet. We're detecting massive energy surges from underground sites worldwide. Whatever is down there is becoming more active every hour. Meanwhile, aboard the Columbia, still orbiting the dead alien world, Dr. Lisa Park had made one final discovery that changed everything. Deep in the ruins, she found a hidden chamber that contained the complete record of what had happened to every civilization that had faced this choice. Jake, she called over the radio to Captain Collins, who was attending the meeting on Earth. You need to hear this. I found the final records. Captain Collins activated the communication link so everyone in the meeting room could hear. What did you find, Lisa? Complete historical records of 47 different civilizations that discovered the truth about the entities. Every single one faced the same choice we're facing now. Her voice carried across space with a weight that made everyone in the room lean forward. Some chose to continue serving as guardians, accepting the technological gifts in exchange for maintaining the prison. Others chose to fight, and a few chose a third option. What third option? Admiral Turner asked. They chose to sacrifice themselves, to destroy their own civilizations rather than let the entities wake up or burden another species with the knowledge. The room fell silent. On the monitors, more warning lights began blinking as containment systems continued to fail around the world. Dr. Kate Morrison stood up and walked to the window, though it only showed the secure facility's underground walls. So we have three choices. Serve forever as guardians of something we can't understand. Try to fight beings that can rewrite reality. Or follow the example of every other civilization and destroy ourselves to protect the universe. Dr. Wright shook his head. There's a fourth option we haven't considered. What if we try to communicate with other living civilizations? What if we warn them and ask for help? Betty Clark pulled up another display. We've already considered that. According to the alien records, the living civilizations in the galaxy maintain their distance from this region of space for a reason. They know about the entities and they're too afraid to get involved. Professor Davis found another passage in his research. According to these texts, every civilization that tried to get help from others ended up facing the choice alone. The knowledge of what's imprisoned here is too dangerous to share. Other species would either run away or try to use the entities for their own purposes. Admiral Turner looked at the containment status displays. Several sites were now showing critical failure warnings. How much time do we have to decide? Dr. Johnson checked her latest readings. Based on current deterioration rates, maybe 2 weeks before the first major containment breach. After that, it's a cascade failure. Once one site fully opens, the others will follow within days. Captain Collins spoke from his position aboard the Columbia. What about trying to strengthen the containment? If we understand how it works now, maybe we can repair it. Dr. Wright answered, his voice heavy with the memory of his encounter. The entity I communicated with made it clear that the containment was always meant to be temporary. It was designed to last long enough for the galaxy's civilizations to find a permanent solution. But no one ever found one. Betty Clark activated a new screen showing technological advancement charts. There's something else we need to consider. Our rapid technological development isn't slowing down. If anything, it's accelerating. The entities have been feeding us knowledge to help maintain the prison, but they've also been preparing us for something else. Preparing us for what? Dr. Morrison asked. To serve them when they wake up. To be their agents in this reality while they complete their transcendence in others. The weight of this revelation settled over the room like a dark cloud. Humanity hadn't just been unknowing guardians. They had been unknowing servants in training. Dr. Park's voice came over the communication link again. There's more. I found records of what happened to the civilizations that chose each option. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was barely a whisper. The ones that chose to keep serving eventually lost their free will entirely. They became extensions of the entities, thinking they were still making their own choices but actually carrying out the entity's will in every action. What about the ones that chose to fight? They lasted anywhere from days to years depending on their technology level, but they all fell eventually. The entities don't fight in any way we understand. They simply change the rules of reality until resistance becomes impossible. And the ones that chose self-destruction? They succeeded in delaying the entity's awakening, but only temporarily. The prison eventually chose new guardians from other species. The cycle continued. Admiral Turner stood up and walked to the monitors showing the failing containment systems. So no matter what we choose, the entities eventually wake up. Professor Davis closed his ancient texts. According to everything I've read, yes, the prison was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to give the galaxy time to evolve a species capable of coexisting with transcended beings. Dr. Johnson looked up from her readings with alarm. We have a problem. Energy levels at the primary site just spiked beyond anything we've recorded. Something major is happening. The monitors around the room began flashing urgent warnings. Deep beneath their feet, something that had slept for millions of years was beginning to stir more actively than ever before. Betty Clark coordinated with monitoring stations around the world. It's happening everywhere. All sites are showing. Massive activity increases. We're out of time. Dr. Wright looked around the room at the faces of people who held humanity's fate in their hands. We need to make a choice. Now. Admiral Turner took a deep breath. Each option leads to the same result eventually, but they lead there in different ways. We can choose how humanity faces what's coming. Captain Collins spoke from space, his voice carrying the weight of command. Whatever we decide together, and we decide for our entire species. Dr. Morrison returned to the table. The question isn't whether the entities will wake up. The question is whether humanity will face that awakening as free beings, making their own choice, or as slaves who never knew they had one. Outside the secure facility, the world continued its normal routine. People went to work, children played, and life continued as it always had. But deep underground, beneath their feet, ancient power stirred and prepared to reclaim a reality they had been forced to abandon millions of years ago. The monitors showed critical warnings at every containment site. Time had run out for delay or preparation. Humanity's representatives sat around a table, knowing that their next words would determine not just their species' fate, but possibly the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. The choice was theirs to make, but every option led into darkness.